The year barely started, and Logan Paul is already back in the middle of another controversy.
Y'all, Logan here. As an avid collector and strategic investor myself, I am so stoked to announce the launch of Liquid Marketplace.
And what makes this one different is that it didn't come out of nowhere. The warning signs were there years ago, quietly buried under hype, collectibles, and promises of next-level investing.
You can just buy a token on Liquid Marketplace to own high-value, top-tier assets.
At the time, it looked like a clean pivot away from past mistakes. Something safer. Something tangible. But now, old decisions are resurfacing. Investors are asking uncomfortable questions. And a familiar pattern is starting to look impossible to ignore. Because this isn't just about a Pokemon card or a failed platform. It's about whether this was ever truly an accident, or if history is repeating itself right in front of us.
I'll keep harping on it. Stop making fun of NFTs. People like, yo, it is important technology.
After the NFT bubble burst and projects across the space collapsed, the shift was almost immediate. Digital promises lost their shine, and anything tied to the blockchain started to feel radioactive. That's when Logan began leaning heavily into something that looked far more grounded. Physical collectibles, high-end Pokemon cards, sealed boxes, rare memorabilia, items you could actually hold.
Pokemon is blowing up. I have no doubt in my mind this card will be worth $1 million between 2 and 3 years.
Compared to pixel art and speculative tokens, this felt like growth, a smarter move. Publicly, it positioned him as someone who had learned from the chaos of the crypto era and was now investing in assets with real-world value.
I believe we're set to level the playing field by allowing anyone to own a piece of the world's rarest collectibles.
Millions were spent, headlines followed, and the optics worked. Pokemon was surging in popularity, and tangible collectibles had a long track record of appreciation. To many observers, this looked like a reset. But while the assets were physical, the infrastructure he built around them would soon drift back into very familiar territory. That familiar territory appeared in the form of Liquid Marketplace, a platform built around a simple but powerful idea. Instead of needing millions of dollars to buy elite collectibles, everyday users could own fractions of them.
A platform where collectors can buy and sell fractions of rare collectibles via tokens on the blockchain.
The pitch sounded modern, fair, and inclusive. Tokens would represent shared ownership of rare physical items, stored securely, while trading happened digitally. For newcomers, it felt similar to buying fractional shares of expensive stocks. For collectors, it offered access to assets they'd never touch otherwise. Timing helped too. This was an era when digital ownership had already been normalized, from sports highlights to virtual art, so the concept didn't feel foreign. And with Logan publicly backing the project, many people assumed the hard lessons of the NFT collapse had already been learned. On the surface, it looked like innovation, but beneath the sleek language and polished demos, the structure relied on trust more than transparency, and that trust was about to be tested. What separated this project from countless other platforms wasn't the technology. It was the face attached to it. Logan didn't just promote Liquid Marketplace casually. He positioned himself as a co-founder and collector who believed in the vision. He appeared in launch videos, walked viewers through the concept, and repeatedly framed the platform as a way to level the playing field.
I believe we're set to level the playing field by allowing anyone to own a piece of the world's rarest collectibles.
That mattered. At the time, his reputation had stabilized, and many people were willing to give him the benefit of the doubt. His involvement signaled legitimacy in a space already filled with skepticism. For investors on the fence, his endorsement wasn't just marketing, it was reassurance. The assumption was simple. If his name was on it, he wouldn't let it go sideways again. But that logic quietly shifted the entire risk profile. Instead of evaluating the platform on fundamentals, many users were trusting the person behind it. And once trust replaces scrutiny, the foundation becomes far more fragile than it looks. Every platform needs a flagship, and for Liquid Marketplace, this was it. Logan's Pikachu Illustrator card wasn't just rare, it was framed as untouchable. The only copy ever graded a perfect PSA 10, paraded as the most valuable Pokemon card on the planet.
The rarest, most valuable card in the world, there's only one of them. One in a PSA 10, you see the label up there, meaning it's perfect.
He wore it to massive public events, chained around his neck, turning a collectible into a spectacle. That image did a lot of heavy lifting. It transformed the platform's pitch from abstract ownership to emotional buy-in. This wasn't just about investing. It was about owning a slice of history alongside a celebrity who earned it.
This card couldn't be bought. It was earned.
The card became the ultimate proof of concept, the asset that made everything else feel real. If fractional ownership could work for this, it could work for anything. But by tying the platform so closely to a single symbol, everything became dependent on what happened to that one card and who actually controlled it. While the platform gained traction, the trading card community wasn't fully convinced. Longtime collectors and analysts started pointing out issues that didn't sit right, especially around the Pikachu Illustrator itself. One of the loudest critics was Rattle Pokémon, who questioned how the card was ever awarded a perfect PSA 10 in the first place. Photos from earlier years suggested it had previously been graded lower, raising eyebrows about how it suddenly became flawless. On top of that, Liquid Marketplace's own terms raised alarms. The fine print allowed the platform to change rules, pause access, or modify features with little notice and limited liability. To skeptics, this wasn't just legal boilerplate, it was a warning. The entire system depended on trust, yet offered few guarantees if things went wrong. At the time, these concerns were brushed off as negativity or jealousy, but those early critiques didn't disappear. They waited, and years later, they'd come rushing back into the spotlight. The situation stayed quiet until Logan resurfaced with a new announcement that reopened old wounds. He revealed plans to sell the Pikachu Illustrator card, framing it as part of a massive upcoming auction. That's when people remembered something crucial. This card wasn't supposed to belong to just one person anymore. Years earlier, Liquid Marketplace had sold fractional ownership of it to the public. So the obvious question hit all at once. What happens to those owners now? Logan later claimed that months earlier, he had already repurchased the outstanding shares through a buyback, using provisions buried in the platform's terms. According to him, a large sum was paid and distributed to token holders based on their percentages. But the math didn't sit right. The reported buyback value implied a fraction of the card's public valuation, and many users insisted they never received a payout at all. What was presented as a clean resolution only raised more doubts, turning a dormant controversy into an active one overnight. As more people dug into the buyback claims, the situation grew messier by the day. Users began reporting that they couldn't access their accounts, their wallets were frozen, and any supposed payouts were nowhere to be found. Communication from the platform slowed to a crawl, then practically stopped altogether. Around the same time, branding quietly changed. Promotional material vanished, social media accounts went inactive, and the platform itself became increasingly difficult to access. Publicly, Logan began distancing himself, framing the issues as operational problems outside his control. But to investors, that explanation rang hollow. His face had been everywhere when money was flowing in, yet now that money was locked up, accountability felt blurry. What started as confusion slowly turned into frustration, then suspicion. Because at this point, it wasn't about technical glitches anymore. It was about whether the system ever worked the way people were told it did. The silence didn't last forever. Eventually, the situation escalated beyond online debates and entered the hands of regulators. Authorities in Canada launched an investigation into Liquid Marketplace, alleging serious issues behind the scenes. According to filings, millions raised from investors were allegedly misused, with claims that funds meant for the platform were redirected toward personal expenses through shell companies. Even more damaging, regulators argued that the tokens sold as fractional ownership may never have legally represented ownership at all, classifying them instead as unregistered securities. That distinction changed everything. If true, it meant many users weren't investors in collectibles. They were buyers of something with no enforceable claim. Notably, Logan's name wasn't listed in the formal complaint, but the timing raised questions. With assets frozen and investigations ongoing, payouts stalled indefinitely. What once looked like a tech hiccup now appeared to be something far more serious, and for investors, the wait for answers only grew longer. When you zoom out, the details start lining up in an uncomfortable way. This wasn't the first time Logan attached his name to a complex financial product, promised innovation, and later claimed distance when things unraveled. From crypto projects to NFTs to now tokenized collectibles, the through line isn't Pokemon or blockchain. It's proximity to hype without long-term responsibility. Each time, the pitch sounds different, but the outcome feels familiar. Big promises, massive visibility, confused investors, and unresolved fallout. Supporters argue he's just unlucky with partners. Critics say the common denominator is obvious. At a certain point, intent almost becomes irrelevant. What matters is the result. And for many watching this unfold, it's starting to feel less like a one-off mistake and more like a cycle that keeps repeating, just dressed in a new theme every time. As it stands, the future of Liquid Marketplace remains unclear. The Pikachu Illustrator auction is still looming. A Netflix appearance is on the horizon, and investors are left waiting in limbo for clarity that hasn't arrived. Whether Logan was misled, careless, or simply too eager to chase the next big opportunity is still up for debate. But what's harder to argue against is the pattern. Each reinvention is framed as a fresh start, yet somehow ends with the same questions about accountability and trust. At some point, pivots stop looking like growth and start looking like avoidance. And as this story continues to unfold, the real test won't be what the card sells for. It'll be whether anyone is finally willing to break the cycle.